Donald. Obviously, they've given up a lot of draft picks, so they need to get some veterans in there to play. I also thought about Pittsburgh because of his brothers, but I like Green Bay for J.J. Watt.
You know, Chris, I like your Rams idea. It's beautiful out here. The weather's great. But I think the best landing spot for J.J. Watt is Kansas City. The one thing missing from Watt's spectacular career, the one thing he needs in his trophy case is a Super Bowl, and the Kansas City Chiefs were 31st in the league against the run. Okay, Chris Jones needs some help. J.J. Watt graded out as top 10 in the league. Okay, top 10 in the league, according to Pro Football Focus, against the run. I think he would be awesome on the Kansas City Chiefs defensive line. You want to win a ring? You go play with Pat Mahomes and Chris Jones.
For me, it's a no-brainer where J.J. Watt ends up, and it's the Tennessee Titans. Mike Vrabel spent 3 years with J.J. Watt over there in Houston, so he knows what type of head coach he's getting and who he can play for. And any player that got released in the NFL, you always want to stay in that division and play your former team 2 times that season. So I think he goes with a head coach he's familiar with, a team that's contending to win a division every year, and that's going to Tennessee Titans.
All right, on to Carson Wentz, who's still in limbo in Philly as the Eagles wait for the best offer. They're not getting much. Chris, the best landing spot for Carson Wentz this offseason is?
This is an easy one, Jason. Indianapolis, the Colts. You send him out of the NFC. You don't have to see him a lot. Frank Reich, who was the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia when Wentz had his best season, was en route to winning the MVP award. He's the head coach in Indy. Carson Wentz needs a completely fresh start, and he would get it in Indianapolis with Frank Reich. They also, share a Christian faith together, so maybe he can get, bonded with Carson that way. I know they had that bond in Philadelphia. They got a good running game. They got a, good defense. They got some pretty good receivers. I think Indianapolis could be back in the mix. I'm not going to put them ahead of Kansas City, but I think they'd be right there with everyone else in the AFC if they could get Carson Wentz, get his head right, and get him playing close to what he did back in 2017.
Yeah, I've joked about many teams with Wentz. I'm not a huge fan of his work, if you couldn't tell. I mentioned Chicago earlier. What about the New England Patriots, guys? We saw Bill Belichick try to resuscitate the career of Cam Newton, and it looked good for a minute, and then Cam kind of fell apart. He had COVID. But I think if Bill Belichick gets his hands on Wentz, there's a chance. We know Belichick loves to, shop in the bargain basement bin. That's where Carson Wentz is right now. He was awful last year, but Belichick, I think, can do something with him. However, I just don't know if he's going to want to ante up the draft picks that the Eagles are going to want for Wentz. But I think that would be an interesting pairing for sure.
Chris, although I do like Wentz to the Colts, that does make sense. But I think he'll fit in Denver. He'll have to compete for a starting spot, but Denver has a great offensive line that I think will attract him because he's always running for his life in Philly. And then he has 3 receivers that can get the job done in Sutton, Judy, and Hamlin. So he got guys that can be weapons on the outside. He can be protected. So I think Denver will be a nice landing spot for him.
That's a good one. All right, let's move to Deshaun Watson, the superstar quarterback, still waiting on the Texans to trade him. He wants out. Chris, the team you want to see Deshaun Watson play for next season is?
This is a tough one because the word was want to see him, but I'm going to go with San Francisco, the 49ers. There are other places I wouldn't mind seeing him. I wouldn't mind seeing him with the Jets. I wouldn't mind seeing him in Miami. But I think I'm going to go with the 49ers because they would have a shot to win the Super Bowl. I know it'd be his first year there, so that's, a lot to ask. But with that defense and then Kyle Shanahan's offense, I think Deshaun Watson would be tremendous there and take them to the next level where Jimmy G couldn't take them to. So I think San Francisco's the place or the best place for Deshaun Watson.
I think it's got to be my New York Jets. Guys, I've been a Jets fan for about 3 decades. My young kids ask me, Dad, why do you root for the Jets? They stink. They've never been good. And I tell them, listen, I was born in New York. I've got this affinity for the Jets, and they've never had a franchise quarterback. You got to go back basically to Joe Namath like 50 years ago. No disrespect to Chad Pennington, or Mark Sanchez. Jets, by the way, longest playoff drought in the NFL now that the Browns got to the playoffs last year. The Jets need Watson badly. I think it's a perfect fit. Sam Darnold was supposed to be the guy. He had a nice run, but never had a chance because Adam Gase was terrible. Deshaun Watson and the Jets is perfect.
Deshaun, listen to me. Trust me on this one. Come down to South Beach. I always see your Instagram. You on both. Listen, I don't understand why Houston and Miami won't make this trade. You know, Houston, they can get Tua, who has a high ceiling in a trade. They can get Xavier Howard, who's an all-pro corner in this trade, and a couple draft picks. You need a couple guys to solidify your roster in Houston. And Miami, they're in win now. So why wouldn't you trade for a top 5 quarterback to come in and get this team going right now in the division? Who's up for grabs?
All right, let's move on to Odell Beckham. He had some cryptic tweets over the weekend. I mean, that's what he does. He lives on social media. His future with the Browns somewhat in question. Chris, the team you want to see Odell Beckham play for next season is?
I'd like to see him in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. Now, I know Devontae Adams is a top receiver there, and I think OBJ's been humbled enough where he would go in there and be content to be that guy, that second guy to Devontae. I mean, maybe he emerges as their top receiver because he's that talented. I also think he needs a veteran quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers who, you know, OBJ will defer to Aaron, I think, and Aaron's got the cachet, you know, to not be intimidated by OBJ. I think Baker Mayfield was a bit intimidated by OBJ and his big personality and tried to get him the ball too much when it wasn't there instead of just making the right play. So I think OBJ, look, Green Bay, they're on the clock. They need to try to get it done now. Get Aaron Rodgers another Super Bowl. So they need to go, you know, I mentioned J.J. Watt. Go get OBJ to shore up that receiving group. I think he'd be great up on the frozen tundra.
All right, how about this? Odell Beckham opposite DeAndre Hopkins in Arizona. You got Kyler Murray on the rookie deal, right? We've seen Christian Kirk really struggle. Larry Fitzgerald, we don't know if he's returning for another season. Arizona has the money in free agency to go out and spend. This is a team on the cusp, guys. I really think they've got a chance to make some noise next year, but they need one more receiver for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Odell Beckham and DeAndre Hopkins, they will make the jump to light speed in the NFC if that happens.
For me, it's the Chiefs. You know, Andy Reid loves weapons. When he brought Sammy Watkins over from L.A., he paid him almost $16 a year to be that receiver to get guys not to be able to double Tyreek Hill, but Sammy Watkins couldn't stay healthy. You bring Odell Beckham over, I think this is a guy who can just be himself. Andy Reid loves for guys to just take on their personality. He embraces for guys to show their personality. So if you put Odell Beckham with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes, you got another Super Bowl coming up.
All right, and finally, we wrap up in New England. Lots of question marks around the Patriots heading into next year, including at QB. Chris, the Patriots starting quarterback next season should be blank.
Jimmy Garoppolo. I mentioned that, you know, San Francisco should go get Deshaun Watson, so Jimmy G would be available. Why not New England? Reuniting with Bill Belichick. You know, Belichick ate some humble pie this year when Tom Brady went out and won the Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. This would be a way for him to show, I was right about Jimmy G all along. If he had stayed here, we wouldn't have had that drop-off when Tom Brady left. Obviously, Jimmy G would be comfortable there. I think, and look, everybody's down on Jimmy G, and I get that he's not an elite quarterback, but he still is a very good quarterback. He wins games. When he's been in San Francisco, there's no question he has won games. He got that team to the Super Bowl. I know he missed the throw that could have sealed the game, the long bomb, but he still got them to the Super Bowl. I think he's a guy that can win, and he should be the guy.
has the money in free agency to go out and spend. This is a team on the cusp, guys. I really think they've got a chance to make some noise next year, but they need one more receiver for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Odell Beckham and DeAndre Hopkins, they will make the jump to light speed in the NFC if that happens.
For me, it's the Chiefs. You know, Andy Reid loves weapons. When he brought Sammy Watkins over from L.A., he paid him almost $16 a year to be that receiver to